As Sikhs, we recognize the deep connection that Indigenous peoples have with these territories and the enduring relationship that they maintain with this land. We also acknowledge the historical injustices, including dispossession, cultural suppression, and forced relocation that have impacted these communities. A warm welcome for all of you for coming out tonight and showing your support to this event. A huge shout out to those who are logged in on our live stream currently. Thank you for taking time out for this event. We understand that with other obligations, it really gets tough, but it's so important that we show up for these events to understand the experiences of Sikh Canadian women in the political space. And it's also important to stay informed on some key issues that are going to impact us in the upcoming BC election on October 19th. The Sikh community has established itself as a political force in Canada. However, while the entire community has been responsible for helping elect a record number of Sikh parliamentarians, it is quite rare to see female members of the community actually participating in the electoral process. Politicians routinely court the male members of the Sikh community without addressing the specific needs of women or creating forums by which women can have their issues heard. There are a number of possible reasons for this lack of engagement with Sikh women, but KaursVote aims to help address these issues. The WSO is honored to take these steps in not only addressing the underrepresentation of Sikh women, but by also providing them this platform to engage them in political discourse. In addition to organizing awareness campaigns, KaursVote events are also hosted all across the country in Canada, which provide Sikh women with a platform to voice their concerns and aspirations. These events include panels made up of Sikh women with jobs and experience in the political industries, workshops that help educate women on politics, and of course debates like today, which provide an exclusive opportunity for Sikh women to directly address their voters. The aim of these events is to bridge the gap between Sikh women and the political process. So, for those of you who may not be familiar with the World Sikh Organization of Canada, I'd like to just take a minute and go over some of our work. The WSO is a non-profit organization that promotes and protects the interests of Sikhs in Canada and advocates for the protection of human rights for all. We are the leading Sikh advocacy organization in this country. The WSO has spearheaded many community initiatives, including the Sikh Youth Leadership Institute, the Sikh Family Helpline, KaursVote, Ask Canadian Sikhs, the Sikh Mentorship Program, and 1 Billion Rising, and not to mention the countless Kirpan and Vistar accommodation cases that we assist with almost on a daily basis. For more information on our programs and to stay engaged with some of our work, please check out our social media platforms for future events and programming at worldsikh.org. Also head over to our website, worldsikh.org, and subscribe to our newsletter. Now, I would like to just take a moment to guide your attention to the screen to watch a short clip with some of the archival footage that our organization has collected over the years surrounding anti-Sikh hate. It's very disheartening to see that this is still an ongoing and topical concern for many members of our community.
Exactly popping up in major department store chains, they're being sold from stalls and flea markets.
That's good. Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
That's for?
From small stores in small towns.
Some of them are going down east, never walk anymore. You'll have they send them down for them and that?
And from shops in suburban malls, like Betty's Antiques in Calgary.
100 calendars.
Appreciate the prompt delivery.
Almost anywhere you find the calendar, you also find the so-called Who's the Minority pin and anti-turban pins. In just 8 weeks, close to 13,000 calendars have been sold to customers like Larry Kuhneman. If it was a book, it would be a Canadian bestseller. Owner Betty Rousset not only sells the calendar, she sells the message.
They can join the RCMP. I see absolutely nothing wrong with it. But if they do, let them wear our uniform.
What if they argue it's part of their religion to keep their turbans?
Well, so what if it's part of their religion? I profess to be a Christian. Jesus wore a beard, but you don't see us all walking around with beards, do you?
Yeah.
Now really, do you?
How would you know if somebody's driving down the street, they pull you over, they have a turban on, how do you know if he's a taxi driver or if he's an RCMP? Well, you don't know. Who the hell
shared by the majority in this working class bar.
There isn't many people at this table sitting here that would like to be pulled over by one and accept the idea. I think I'd probably die laughing.
Some guy fucks me over wearing a goddamn Sikh thing on his head.
By singling out a highly, very easily identifiable group of Canadians, ridiculing them, stripping them of their dignity and their self-esteem, driving them to the ground, does not enrich a society, does not strengthen a society.
Jasbir Singh is vice president of the Edmonton chapter of the World Sikh Organization. He says the calendar is racist and dangerous.
So many of you may or may not know, but the current president of the National WSO is right here in BC, Danish Singh. I'd also like to take a minute to take the opportunity to introduce you all to our regional board. Gurpreet Kaur Rai, who is the BC president, and Manpreet Kaur, BC vice president. Gurpreet Kaur Rai has been serving on the national board of the WSO since 2017. She recently became the regional president of BC in November of last year. She is passionate about advocating for human rights, Sikh issues, and women empowerment. Her work with the WSO includes organizing initiatives such as the Sikh Mentorship Program, KaursVote, and the Sikh Leadership Institute in Ottawa each year. Gurpreet Kaur completed her BA in Political Science from the Simon Fraser University, right here, and then went on to obtain a JD from Thompson Rivers University. Professionally, she is a lawyer practicing in the Lower Mainland. Gurpreet Kaur has previously been an executive member of the Simon Fraser University's Sikh Student Association and BC's Sikh Heritage Society. Within her various roles, Gurpreet Kaur has advocated for the Sikh community on a variety of issues. I'd like to take a moment to invite Gurpreet up to just share some remarks with us.
I know that introduction was going to go on for that long. I would have cut some of it out. But thanks for that. Margaret Khalsa, Margaret Fateh. Like Manpreet said, I'm the regional president of the BC chapter here. I'd like to thank you guys all for coming out. I know that events like this, sometimes people are hesitant to come out to, but I think that an initiative like KaursVote, it's extremely important for our community to show up. I think it's time that we start showing up. To talk about KaursVote a little bit, a few of us that actually brainstormed KaursVote were in this room today. About 6 years ago, a few of us got together, and I think there was a provincial election at that time too, or maybe a federal election. But I remember just like, I think 6 years ago, I don't know how old I was, but I was young. And I any women at those events. There's people from my family that would go too, but I was never asked to go. My mom was never asked to go. But my brothers, my cousins, all the male members of our family were attending these events. When it was time to go cast a vote, the males would tell the women, you're going to go vote for this candidate and that's it. And I just remember thinking do you know who you're voting for? Have you done your research? Have you guys thought about why you're voting and who you're voting for? And it was always well, no. And so we kind of got together and thought how do we change this, right? What can we do to empower women to make more informed decisions? Empower Sikh Punjabi women, right? Because that's the void there. So we got together, we envisioned KaursVote to be an all-encompassing initiative. Focusing on education, what are the different levels of governance, right? If you have a healthcare concern, who do you go to? If education is a concern, who do you go to? How do you contact your representative? So that's the education part of it, which we're working on as an organization throughout the country. And then there's also creating spaces like this where Sikh women can engage and participate in politics. And participation can look different. The first panel that we had, it wasn't for candidates. It was staffers, journalists, people working behind the scenes, Sikh women working behind the scenes, which is also equally important, right? So we had that, and I know at other regions they've had different level of engagement from Sikh women at the events, and then creating these spaces and opportunities for Sikh women to tell their stories in their own voices, to have a platform where you can address your voters, right? So I don't think an event like this has happened before, so I'm very excited about this. I think everybody here is very excited about it. I'm just, I'm hoping, we've come a long way all these years. 6 years ago, there wasn't even these many Sikh women candidates running. So we've come a long way, but we do have a lot more work to do. And I'm looking forward to continuing to work with this initiative, on this initiative. With that being said, I know you guys are here to listen to the candidates, so I'd just like to wrap up with, the WSO is a volunteer-based organization. So if you guys like the work that we're doing, you like the programs, you want to see more initiatives and programs like this one, we do need your support. If you haven't already, we do have a donation program called the This Month program. So if you haven't already signed up, please sign up. We have a registration desk. You can sign up there. And then if you have any questions about some of the other programs or initiatives that we do, come and find any of the volunteers, and we're more than happy to discuss those. And follow us on our social media, sign up on our newsletter, and stay engaged with the work that we do. Awesome, thank you.
Thank you, Gregory, for those remarks. To those who may not otherwise have access to legal counsel. She has appeared before all levels of court in BC. Monam obtained her Juris Doctorate in 2021 from Osgoode Hall Law School, where she received the Boer-Alaskan Prize for her paper on Indigenous rights in Canada and was a caseworker for the Innocence Project at Osgoode Hall. She received her BA with distinction from Simon Fraser University in 2018, where she studied political science. During her time at SFU here, Monam received international crisis management training through the NATO Field School program. Alongside her various roles in various community organizations, such as the Sikh Heritage Society BC, she also serves on the Canadian Bar Association of BC's Equity, Diversity and Inclusion Committee, as well as the Young Lawyers Lower Mainland Section Executive. And now for the candidates. So for the BC NDP candidate for Surrey Green Timbers, Honourable Rachna Singh, the Minister of Education and Childcare. Rachna Singh moved from India to Canada in 2001 and chose British Columbia to build a better life for her young family. Before her election as the MLA for Surrey Green Timbers in 2017 and 2020, Rachna worked as a support worker for women facing domestic violence and was a community activist. She is currently the Minister of Education and Childcare and proudly serves the people of Surrey as the MLA for Surrey Green Timbers. The BC NDP candidate for Surrey Newton, Jessie Sun. Jessie Center is a proud trade unionist and human rights lawyer. As legal counsel for the Hospital Employees Union, she fights for workers' rights and a stronger healthcare system every day. In addition to her legal work, she is also a strong advocate in her community, serving as the Vice President of the Surrey Women's Centre and sitting on various boards of the South Asian Bar Association, the BC Canadian Bar Association, Human Rights Law Section, and the BC College of Social Workers. Jessie also recently served on the boards of the United Nations Association in Canada and the Surrey Police Board. The BC Conservatives candidate for Langley Willowbrook, Jody Tour. Jody Tour holds a double PhD in the Doctor of Integrative Medicine and Doctor of Humanitarian Services with the Board of Integrative Medicine, non-prescribing, non-registered with the College of Physicians and Surgeons of British Columbia. Jody's academic achievements have provided her with a strong foundation in healthcare, mental health, social services, and advocacy, dedicated to using this knowledge and expertise to address the complex challenges facing our community and to promote policies that support the health and well-being of all individuals. The independent candidate for Surrey Panorama, Dipinder Saram. Dipinder is a seasoned registered nurse with 26 years of diverse nursing experience. Her professional journey has taken her through different health authorities in BC, including the Provincial Health Services Authority and the BC Emergency Health Services. Currently serving in the Primary Care Division under the Ministry of Health, Dipinder has demonstrated expertise ranging from newborn to pediatric care, clinical resource management, mental health, and specialized focus in dementia and Alzheimer's care. In 2018, she founded and served as the CEO of Nurse on the Go Home and Healthcare Services, showing her entrepreneurial spirit in the healthcare sector. Please welcome the candidates and Manakpar.
We're a little short on mics today. Can get a lot accomplished, but sometimes we can't count quite so well. So that's why we're doing that little switch up. So I'm very pleased to have all of you join us today. It's such a pleasure to be able to host such an accomplished group of women, of Sikh Punjabi women in this community on this stage tonight. And what we're going to do is kind of a two-part panel debate style forum. And so we're going to start off with just some general questions so that our audience can get to know who you are, to kind of develop a bit of a personal connection and know you beyond just the blurbs that we might read on your websites or on your party platform pitches. And flowing from that, what we'll do is go into some more policy-based questions to get some answers to questions that members of our community might have about specific issues or themes that seem to be arising more and more often, and that often are top of mind, not just for Sikh women, but also for your average voter in the Lower Mainland who might be looking to this debate or to your websites for more information to guide them through the voting process. And so before we get into the specific questions, I'm just going to lay some ground rules to guide us and to make sure that we get through this professionally and civilly and in a way that's most effective for the audience today. And so for our questions, I'm going to ask that you initially limit your answers to about 90 seconds, so a minute and a half. And we'll have somebody keeping time and queuing us along for that, because I know it's a bit tough when we've only got small clocks around the room. And there'll also be some time for reply once we get into the policy questions. And so if you would like to reply, just let me know. Maybe,
I think this is working. Okay. It's great to be here with everyone. I think it's really important to have forums like this, and I really love the background that you gave on this, because we do need to create these spaces where we can talk about issues that are important to Sikh Punjabi women, and often we are missing from these spaces, so thank you for creating this safe space. I'm going to try to turn that off, but we'll go with it. So, sorry, could you?
Of course. How and why did you get involved in politics?
Okay. So in terms of getting involved in politics, it wasn't something that I really thought about doing at this moment, at least. It's something that I thought, you do when you're older, you do once you retire, you do it later on in life. And there was no really reason why I thought that was it. It was just because that's what you saw. You saw people that didn't really represent you in that moment. And in the work that I do, so as mentioned, I'm a labor and human rights lawyer for the Hospital Employees Union. So I get to fight for workers every single day, fight for fair wages, fight for safer working conditions, fight for respect in the workplace. I sit on different boards, including the Women's Center, where we're always fighting for ensuring that vulnerable women and children have safe spaces and are taken care of when they're in some of the most difficult points in their lives. And with the South Asian Bar Association, we're always looking at how can we address issues as well that are specific to South Asian community, but Sikh Punjabi community as well. And in all of these spaces, I realized I was already advocating on so many matters, and there are so many ceilings to how much work I could do in those spaces, and that change really needs to happen at that policy level, that legislation level. So it was more of a why not me moment of why do we have to wait until we're older when all of the majority of issues that we're seeing affect me, affect people like me at this age, all the kind of housing issues, affordability issues, all these kind of things, healthcare, all of these things that we see affect all of us. So we need to have those voices at the table. We need to have diversity at the table, because what we don't need is the same opinion repeated over and over again. And a lot of these voices, including young Punjabi Sikh women, were missing from these really important decision-making tables. So it's not an easy decision. It's not an easy path to choose, but if I was going to think, why can't someone be there that can advocate on these issues? Why isn't someone there? I had to be willing to put my name forward and be the one to do that. So that's why I chose to go into politics.
Wonderful. And Ms. Tour, was it similar for you, or was it a bit
Similar. Obviously, diversity is one of them, but my why is I'm a mother of two, and I've got two girls, and so my why is them. Like Gurpreet had just mentioned, I grew up and we used to go to, my parents or my dad used to go to political events, and it'd always be men. We were never involved. My mom was never involved. And now I did run municipally before, and I've walked into rooms where it's just men. And being a candidate, it would be the men would always get chairs. And it's still like that. I'm sure my colleagues that are sitting here probably can advocate for that. And now that I'm running again, it's very similar. We go to a lot of events, where it's very men dominated. So, the political world is, more male driven than female, and being of color or being Punjabi, it was very something that I didn't want my daughters to kind of be similar. Why not you, Mom? Why didn't you make that change? Why didn't you step up? And obviously there are many issues that we're having in our community, so we all talk about them, but we're not coming forward. So I just thought, I see this on a daily. I'm listening to people that are having all these issues. Why can't I step up and be that voice? We're advocating for people on a daily with mental health, the field that I work in, and their families. There's kids that are suffering, there's adults that are suffering. So I just wanted to do this for my girls.
Thank you. And Ms. Singh, I know you for a while, and what is it that initially made you take that plunge, and what's kept you in politics?
Yeah, no, thank you so much. First of all, I really want to thank WSO for organizing such an amazing event. So a real credit goes to all this younger generation of women. So thank you. I got into politics in 2017, but I come from a very, very political family. So politics, I think I got it in, they say, Gurti Mili Sigi. I got it in, I somehow feel it was in the blood. The discussions that we were having at the dining table. And then very early on, I was able to make the difference between the politics, the left, right, and center of the politics. And then also something that was instilled into me by the environment around me was that the governments make a difference. Moving here as as an immigrant, I came here in 2001 with a young family. My son was 2 years old. But I knew that to make a change, those were difficult times here in British Columbia. Lot of changes were happening. A lot of the workers' rights were being targeted. So that's what got me involved at a very grassroots level. Volunteering for, I got involved in the party that I am with, but also volunteering with a number of people. But when the moment actually came, when I was asked to run, I was scared. I came to know later on that it takes a woman about 7 times to convince a woman to run, to take on that position. And that actually happened with me, that having volunteered, having been active part, being a counselor, being a union rep, but still not able to take that plunge, but I'm glad I'm here.
Wonderful, thank you. And Ms. Rand, what was your why?
My why has been, I've always been involved in community work in Seva, back end, then in the forefront. I came to the forefront as a woman. I was encouraged to do so. Over the years, people saw the amount of work I was doing in the back end, and like Jody and some of the others have said here, male dominated. I'd be working with 10 men by myself. I'm doing the work, they're taking the credit. That kind of thing was going on. And for me, it's not a big deal. It's not about the credit, but it's more about, that is true. When I started to realize, why aren't women coming forward? There's a reason for it. We need to step up and show our young girls, our youth. That was one aspect of it. The second aspect of it was I was already doing grassroots community work. A lot of the core concerns that are coming up, whether it's seniors, whether it's youth, whether it's healthcare, all coming up, we raise those issues anyway. I work with several, there's partners here locally that we work together, but there's many organizations across Canada that we also collaborate with, even worldwide. And so globally, we've been trying to make differences in whichever way we can on different platforms. And together, I think, the unity is there, but the voice reaching up to a certain level, it kind of just, you're shunned. You're stopped at you do protests, you do rallies, you speak about it in the media, but then it's all kind of put to stop. We need the actual policy changes in place at a high level, ground up, municipal all the way to federal. And I think if we as women step up, we're used to multitasking as women. We take care of our children, we take care of our houses, we take care of the outside world. And I think as women, we have that capability to take on and be strength for our communities and be the voice that we need. And I think there's a lack of that, right? And so I think as women, Punjabi women cause, we need to step forward and say, you know what, we do this anyway. Why not take it to the next level and be that strength for our community that we need to see?
May also be barriers that other young women face that prevent them from entering politics. And Ms. Torval, we'll start with you on this one.
Barriers, probably not from my family. I have a very supportive family. So my mom and dad, my husband, I'm married, my in-laws, my husband is my backbone. So I'm here because he's at home with my kids. He was like, this is your passion, this is what you want to do. I'm home, I'm here with the kids, you've got that freedom and you're not stressed. It's probably the community, when we're out late, we're Indian, we're women, it's like, oh, you're going by yourself? Is someone going to be there with you? Are you safe? And sometimes we walk into situations, I'm sure the other colleagues here can tell you that. You walk into spaces and you don't know what kind of environment it's going to be. Like you go into some gatherings and if there's alcohol, is someone going to misbehave? is there going to be, I've gone to a fundraiser where a fight broke out, and then, you have to kind of like, okay, I should, remove myself from here. So those kind of barriers, I think, as women of any ethnicity can happen, but in our Indian community, I feel like women are still not at par or at equal with men. So those barriers are there, but with my family or my spouse, I've got full support, which is, amazing, and that's the reason why I can do what I'm doing, and that's the reason why I'm running. So that support is there, but there's lots of changes that we need to make as a community, and I want to make sure that my daughters can not have those challenges that I have been facing. So yeah.
I'm very glad to hear that you've got such a supportive family. I think that really makes. And Ms. Singh, how about you? What have been the biggest barriers that you've encountered?
No, as I said, I was mentioning before, that this decision was not easy. I was quite scared. And if it was not for my family, and especially I would say my husband, I won't be here. I was very happy working in the background, doing the grassroots work, which I was doing. He was the one that prompted me, like, why not? Like, you have tons of excuses not to do it. Like, when I was first approached, I said, not yet, my kids are younger, I will do it after 5 years. And he said, like, what about 5 years? Like, after 5 years, whether this opportunity would be there or not, right? So taking that decision, like, I needed that push, so got that push from my family. But I feel when I got into the politics, first I thought like I will face racism, like being a racialized Sikh woman, an immigrant woman, I will face racism. And I was running in a community which is extremely diverse, Sari community. But instead of racism, what I've found, and I still find it, experience it, is the misogyny. The sexism is so rampant. And even though I got elected as an MLA, I'm a minister, I was a parliamentary secretary for anti-racism before, I still face it. And there's a lot of, you asked me like what has made me go for so long. This is going to be my 3rd term. And the reason I put my name forward, it's easier to take it away and not do it. But then I think about all these younger women. I think about this, like the women who are going to follow me. What example I'm going to set. Like, oh, some people came out and said they scared me, they talked this kind of stuff about me, and I stepped down. I'm doing it for our young generation. I'm doing it for my daughter.
And
I would say the barriers are, there's many. So again, there's always obstacles in the way, what party you're running with, who you're choosing to run with as your colleagues, and also the environment that you're running in. As family, I'll say my first run is kind of funny. Community just threw me in there. My own family didn't even know I was going to run in 2018 when I ran as a school trustee. I had 3 weeks to campaign, and I actually, my name was just thrown into the barrel there. I went with it, and my family didn't even know until my signs went up. And my family's that supportive that the minute they saw my signs go up, and they were like, what, she's running, get on the phones, make calls for her. So, I've got a very supportive family. I'm lucky that way. And they bring out the independence in me, to be honest. And I think that's very important for my daughter to see and others to see. That having that support system of it's okay, you do what you choose to do, and we're with you whatever decision you make. Even currently, as many know here, I was with the Conservative Party of BC, and I have now chosen to go independent in my own riding. With that decision alone, the family, again, let me kind of decide on my own. It wasn't something that I had to face, but from the community end, you face a lot of barriers. Whether people are putting obstacles in your way, leg pulling. I'll be honest, there's a lot of leg pulling that happens in politics, as Rachna and others have mentioned here. And I think you have to have really sort of thick skin. I've heard so much since I've been announced in January till now. You even get bullied at times, and you just have to kind of go through it. And it's not meant for sensitive sort of individuals. You really have to have that strong heart, the strong capability of knowing how to handle your emotions. at the same time of having, like I said, thick skin, because you're going to come across many different individuals. Some will love you, some will not. And you're going to have to hear that hate against you, or the racism that you're going to face as a minority or as a woman, you know, people telling you to step down, you're not good enough. So I think as long as you yourself love yourself as a human and you think of yourself as a valid and value person, I think you can bring that value to the table. And I think anybody and everybody has that opportunity and should run and should not ever let anybody put them down.
What about yourself? Barriers and challenges and how you've overcome them?
Thank you. So I'm going to echo what everyone in terms of family. I've even said that if my family was even a little less supportive, I wouldn't have done it. And sometimes when it's hard, you're like, I blame them for sitting here, right? Like they're just so supportive. And being a young woman, like I don't have children yet, and that's something, you know, you really think about, okay, when do you do it? Are those things that will stop? But that was never a concern. Having that full family support is something that we know we can do it. It takes a village to raise, you know, children, all of our children, everything, and that will happen when it's meant to happen. And, you know, those opportunities aren't always going to be there, so take them when they are there, I think is a big thing. But the family support is really important, because I think a big thing for myself as a young woman is I've been very lucky to have really good mentors, really good spaces, but you still enter these rooms where it's a lot of, you know, generally men, elderly men. And growing up, there's this level of where you automatically respect everyone, you take that, but you really have to learn to say, I hear you, but that doesn't mean that that's necessarily the right view on something, and walk in there and own your space. So sometimes it's yourself. Yourself is the barrier, where you really have to say, I can do this, and tell yourself over and over again. And it's not, you know, even if everyone around you is saying that, you really need to be able to take your space, know that when you are in those rooms that you have you have an opinion, a perspective, an experience that's important and deserves to be in that room, and you need to be there. And I think that's a really important thing, that, you know, having thick skin is one thing, but sometimes it's yourselves, and you just have to keep working on that and know that even if you don't have thick skin, even if you're sensitive, know that your purpose in here is greater than you. You're not in this for yourself, you're in this for the bigger picture. And I really do, and I've said this before, is like, stay in Chardikala, stay in this feeling eternal, like you're doing this, everything is in good, keep in that space mindset, and it really helps you in everything that comes with politics.
Absolutely. And see it in pain.
Well, thank you so much, and I think this is a very important issue, how women are left behind, and especially when I look at it from the intersectional perspective, like women of color are more oppressed wherever they are, right? So I take huge pride in like what our government has done to bring women up. If you look at our caucus, like we have more women than there are men. We have like a cabinet, which is like such a diverse cabinet, like having obviously it's 50% women, 50% men, but also like a really good representation of women, racialized women in that cabinet. I think that's something that we take extremely seriously, and for the pay legislation, like our government has also brought a legislation talking about like bringing this system, like how we can bring pay equity within the sector, especially within the government sector. Whether it is bringing like legislations like anti-racism data legislation, like where we are able to find out where those gaps are, where those barriers are. Having a portfolio, a parliamentary secretary for gender equity within the cabinet, and which is like taking these issues forward. I would say, and also within the government, looking at every issue, whether it's a legislation, whether it's a policy, looking at it from the GBA plus lens. That's what we are all required to do. There is like so many, whether bringing the first very important childcare policy, like childcare BC policy that was started by us in 2018. That was like making sure that the women are able to get into the workforce, right? That we are reducing those barriers. Talking about like issues like pay equity, definitely legislation, but giving respect to the professions that are mostly women-dominated. The previous government was fighting with the teachers. We are making sure that the teachers get the respect and dignity. I can go on, but I will let others talk.
Thank you. Ms. Saran.
Sorry, to that, I just want to ask a question, because I understand equality in the caucus and all that is, that's wonderful. But when we were talking about, say, COVID, let's just put that perspective into play. When COVID was in full force, we saw nurses, and nursing is more of a profession for females than it's dominated by females. In that profession, comparatively to when we worked alongside physicians, male physicians, let's just say, we'd be doing the same work, but we're getting a lot less pay. Exactly the same work, like injecting, like doing our COVID vaccines and doing similar things. So I'd like to just ask, the minister here, as we saw in those kind of situations and scenarios where the nurses were requesting, or similarly females in other professions have requested, that if we're working alongside a male counterpart, how come the discrepancy is there? What would you say to that?
I'm just going to ask that we keep responses to the questions we're posing.
Yeah.
And if you have points of rebuttal, we can bring those up afterwards.
Okay.
Just because the focus is for the audience to get to know your stance and what it is that each one of you brings to the table when it comes to Election Day, which is just around the corner.
Yes.
So what is your plan for addressing the pay gap and ensuring that there is gender equity?
Yeah, and I think that's important, like one of just this alone, this perspective of what we saw through not only COVID, but other times when we're looking at healthcare alone. There's much gaps and discrepancy within the system. And so I think that needs to be addressed, again, brought forward. Where are the gaps? Where is the funding going? How is it mismanaged? And I think those are very important core points. And I completely understand, and thank you again for addressing that. This is not going to be a rebuttal, but I think these things are very important to bring to the forefront. And it's not to have our sort of scenarios of conflict here. It's more of what was the reasoning for that? I think that's what I'm trying to get at here, is what is the reasoning for certain gaps in our system currently that are not being addressed?
Thank you. And Ms. Tour, what about your party's position on this issue? What do you plan to do to address this?
So diversity and equality is very important, not to the party, but to myself as well, being a woman. I believe that our party believes in we have Indigenous, we have, LGBTQ, we've got Punjabi Sikhs, we've got turban, we've got every kind of ethnicity. We've got Korean, Chinese, African, we've got them all. So diversity is very important, and equality pay. Women do like the exact same work, like Deepinder just said, that, why are we being paid less than men when we do the same work, and probably even better, sorry, but probably we could, we're good at what we do, we're hardworking, so we should be able to get the same pay. And our party stands on that, as men and women should be exactly the same.
Thank you. And Ms. Center, because we do have two NDP representatives, I'm going to shift the question now a bit for you. And my question for you is, over the last few weeks and last few months, we've seen a rampant increase in anti-Sikh hate and hate crimes, not just in public, but also propagated on social media through comments and bullying. What will you do if elected to address this issue and make sure that your Sikh constituents feel safe?
Thank you for your question. It's really important that all communities, including the Punjabi Sikh community, feel safe here. We're here in Canada. Safety, security of the person is really, really important. And there are many steps that the government is already taking. When you look at, Minister Singh mentioned the anti-racism data, it's really important that we have that information, we have that data to see what's happening in the province in order to address it. And I know we're not talking about the pay transparency, but even that, we need to have that data in order to know how to address the issue. We can sit here and say we want to fix everything, but if we don't have the information, we have nothing to work from. So that's really important. It's also really important we have a new hotline, an anti-racism hotline, and I know you guys do as well. And those are really important pieces, because in order to address those issues, we need to get that data. We need people to actually call in, say what's happening out there, what are the issues they're seeing, so that we can gather that data, we can address the concerns, we can create programs and grants to ensure that communities feel safe. Because at the end of the day, if one community is not safe, none of us are safe. So we all need to make sure that we are working together and not undermining the blanket of our entire community, which is being able to work together and addressing these issues and have those things in place.
Thank you. And Ms. Tour, same question to you. What if elected will you do and will your party do to make sure that Sikh constituents and Sikh women in particular feel safe online and in public?
Yeah, just like Jesse just said, so our party, we've been very vocal about everybody. It's not just Sikh Punjabis, but everybody needs to feel safe, protected, not only in their communities, but in their homes as well. So that's a very important thing. No person should feel unsafe, walking on the streets. This is Canada, and on Canadian soil, everybody needs to feel safe. So we will be implementing, anti-hate programs and bullying programs. That is one of our biggest, actually for crime and school programs as well, that every child, every person feels safe in their communities.
And do you have any concrete types of programs or policies that your party plans to introduce?
They do. They don't have anything in place right now. We're working on different, we just did our health platform, and there's different platforms that will be out before the election.
Wonderful, thank you. And Ms. Saran, same question to you. I know that you're running as an independent, and so it may be a bit of a different scenario with you. But if elected, what is your promise to your constituents to make sure that they feel safe and that anti-Sikh hate crimes are brought down?
Well, I think vocalizing is very important. Advocating and vocalizing. I think a lot of people feel, very alone when they're bullied or when they are facing racism. Addressing the concern with your sort of community and counterparts and politicians, approach them. I think it's very important to bring these to the forefront, because we have to address it as a community. An individual alone cannot tackle something of that source. I mean, when we talk about bullying, we have zero tolerance bullying sort of policies in place in all sort of platforms right now, but we still see it systemically. We still see bullying going on. And, some witness it and some will just stay silent to it because they are the victim themselves. I think if you're witnessing this, you need to be there for the victim. You need to actually help them address it. You need to, bring these sort of scenarios out front and so that we as a community can tackle it together, because like I said, it's not going to be a one-man sort of show here. When it comes to racism, it's across the board, it's systemic, it's upfront. And nowadays we see it, you know, even when people are transporting, using public transportation, they're walking out of their homes on the sidewalk. We're noticing it everywhere now. It's becoming more and more apparent. And I think as a community, we all need, accountability needs to be on all fronts.
Thank you. And I know that you mentioned that it's difficult for one individual to address all of these concerns. And so one of the other questions that some of your constituents may have when considering who to vote for and casting that ballot is why an independent candidate? Because there may be concerns that, you know, is it possible for an independent candidate to accomplish something without party support? And so what is it about your promises to your voters that should have them vote for you as opposed to a candidate that has a party behind them?
I think because you take the responsibility of being vocal for your constituents, and you're taking it forward to a level that you can voice it, but you obviously have to work with counterparts, you know, to address it. I think there's two layers here. One is just to bring it to the forefront as an independent, saying this is what we are noticing in our riding, or in our, you know, this is what our constituents are noticing, this is what our community needs. But to help address that situation, you would have to work with the right levels of government in order to address that. I mean, some may come from municipal level, some may come from provincial, and some from federal. As an independent, I think the benefit of being independent is you are willing and ready to work with everyone. And I think in today's date, that is exactly what we are lacking. A lot of independents are stepping up this round, as you can see. And I think one of the reasons is that we are willing and ready to work with anybody who will address the concern and, you know, help us create the right policy in place versus just having our opposing party policies.
Thank you. And Ms. Singh, I know, you know, as many in our audience are aware, Premier Eby recently changed your party's official position on the carbon tax. And this has some voters worried that the party is going back on its word and trying to reverse its position purely for political advantage. How do you respond to that concern today?
I would say that our party is the one that has taken climate change extremely seriously. I would say there are some party leaders who don't believe in climate change, who don't believe that climate change is a crisis that we are dealing with, and they are not thinking about the future of our children when they are making those comments. We have a very strong climate action plan that was started in 2017 when we first formed the government, and also led by the Ministry of Environment. Also the work that is happening within different ministries, like how we are, whether it is how we can tackle the fossil fuels, the impact of that, how we are looking at different policies, like how we are bringing different kind of, even when we are creating jobs, like those are green jobs, those are like definitely bringing more, which are benefiting the economy, but they are green jobs that are good for our environment. The policy change that Premier Eby just announced, we are talking about, we are not letting the big polluters get away without any penalty. We think that the big polluters have a big role, and they need to pay more. The burden of that, like what the big polluters are doing, like the burden of that should not be on an average family. That's what the only change is. We are very much committed to climate action.
Thank you. And Ms. Stewart, turning to you, I know that one of the key aspects of your party's platform has been its pitch to axe the tax. Now that the NDP has reversed their position on the carbon tax, why should voters whose primary concern was the carbon tax still vote Conservative?
Just like Ms. Singh just said, that it's not on everything, so they're kind of like flip-flopping their answers of, it's a political thing, right? Election's coming up, it's in 30 some odd days. They have to come up with something, and that's something that we have been very vocal about. We're not saying that there's environment, you know, there's climate change is not a thing, it is, but taxing people into poverty is a problem. Carbon tax affects people from their groceries to their gases. heating their homes, it's a major problem. So we as a party believe in that taxing people is not going to change climate change. So we're still sticking to where we stand, and we're firm on that, and we've been firm on that from day one. So.
Thank you. And Ms. Saran, I know that you were previously with the Conservative Party, you're now an independent. When it comes to the issue of carbon tax, where do you stand?
I've always, voiced that we don't need carbon tax at this point because, I mean, as some of the other candidates have already said, inflation is already a big problem for us, and I do understand climate. Climate is very important to us. I think we need to find different ways of addressing those issues. When we're just taxing upon taxing people, I think what we're doing is driving more into poverty, homelessness. It's becoming a severe problem for many. Some can't even afford their medications right now. Some can't afford even groceries right now. And I think what we need to address first and foremost is, how do we entertain not only climate action, but then also at the same time, how do we address the poverty issue that's happening out there, housing issue. There's so many different layers involved. I don't think it's very easy to say, let's implement a tax here and now let's take it away. I think we really need to analytically look at things, pull out the data, pull out the research, pull out what's happening. Where is that fund going to actually be used? Is it going to make a very big impact on us or not? And if it's not, then why are we placing it? Why are we having carbon tax placed in and making lives more difficult for those who can't already afford it, especially seniors?
Thank you. And Ms. Senner, with respect to this change in policy, how do you respond to voters who are concerned about their ability to trust the NDP government if there's been this major reversal so close to an election?
So I think the big thing here is that it's not necessarily a reversal on it, which Minister Singh was saying. She still didn't really get to finish there, but the polluters, the big polluters, are still going to be taxed. It's taking the burden off the individuals. It's taking the burden off the individuals that are having affordability issues right now. And when this was first implemented, there was a general consensus to this idea of carbon tax, and it came from the federal level. But with the flip-flopping federally that's happened, that's really what's led to this lack of consensus in the public, and that's where the decision has been made. It's not a flip-flop, it's are we targeting the right group of people, the real polluters, and are we at the same time addressing the affordability issues for families and young people and workers in this province?
Thank you. And Ms. Tour, I know that we've talked about the issue of anti-racism and specifically anti-Sikh hate. But one of the issues that we've been hearing is that the leader of your party, John Rustad, has recently come under fire for what many in the community say are ties to and support for far-right individuals and movements, including those who have been labeled as white nationalists. And this has included criticism for his participation in the Reclaiming Canada conference, as well as his recent interview with Jordan Peterson. So what do you say to people of color, and in particular Sikh women in the audience today?
I'm very proud to actually be running with John Rustad. I have never seen any racism or any discrimination. Actually, like I mentioned, we have diversity on our party, and I think having interviews with different people doesn't label him being racist or an extremist of anything. It's being in a place, I'm here, there was conversations of, where are you going? You're gonna go to a World Sikh organization, core movement, what does that mean? That doesn't label who I am. I think there's freedom for people to be able to go to places and get to know. It doesn't label me in any way or put me with an organization. There might be some things that people can agree to disagree, but that doesn't mean that I shouldn't be present or I shouldn't be able to voice or be, able to come here and sit on a panel. So he's got the freedom to be able to, be interviewed and sit on different panels and be in different organizations, but that doesn't, I in no means have seen any sort of racism or any anti-hate from my party or my leader.
Thank you for that. Another topic that we wanted to bring to your attention and get everybody's perspectives on is the issue of substance use, particularly high rates of substance use by young people and South Asian men within the Punjabi and Sikh communities. what are each of your parties or you as individuals going to do to address that issue and to ensure that people who suffer from substance use issues and who deal with addiction receive the help that they need without being demonized and punished? And Ms. Sunner, I will start with you on that one.
Thank you. So I think this is a really important question. When it comes to substance use, first thing that we start with is that it's a disease, right? So I think that taking the stigma away from the issue is where you can start in order to allow it to be treated as a medical issue. And I think it's important that, not just our party, but in our community, it's a really important thing that we talk about these things and we bring light to these issues, because for a long time in Punjabi communities, I will say, these are issues that we've just dealt with behind closed doors. Say you don't want to bring it out in society, it's just something that's normal. It's not. And those are things, substance use can have impacts otherwise as well. It can have impacts on the family, it can have impacts on the women in the family, it can lead to other issues, domestic violence, we see that as well in our community. And those are all pieces, it's a holistic answer that we need. We need to have programs that are available, we need to have funding into programs where we can address these issues in a community safe way. So because you asked about Punjabi men, I will say we need to know that it's different. Our issues are going to be dealt with in a different way than it might be in another community. And we need to have community sensitive ways to deal with that. And then we also need to have programs for families where you can deal with the effects that substance use can have on the rest of the family. And with a lot of that, a lot of the work that I do with the Women's Center, that's a lot of the pieces of it. It's not just women leaving, it's women wanting to know how they can address these issues in their families and ensure that they have a safe place for their children. So investing in these organizations, in allowing grants, making sure that we have safe spaces to have these discussions is really important. And that was me. Sorry. Sorry, I didn't look that way.
Thank you. Ms. Duran, I will turn it over to you. What will you do policy-wise as an independent candidate to make sure that the issues around substance use and addictions are dealt with and that these individuals receive treatment rather than being demonized or looked down upon for what are health issues and diseases?
Right. Now, just as a nurse, prevention is always very important, right? Creating that awareness of what harm substance use is and how it can affect us as individuals and our families. I mean, we already do a lot of that work on grassroots level in the community with the opioid crisis and other sort of concerns when it comes to alcoholism. But yes, South Asian population overall, we do have a general sort of stigma that is out there. And I hate to use the word stigma because you're being judgmental again for that individual. What we need to actually say is, you have a root problem which we need to address, right? Usually the alcoholism and substance use comes from some sort of trauma you face throughout your family, throughout life in general. Somewhere along the line, you probably have had anxiety, depression, or other mental health involved that you weren't able to address properly at that time, which has now led you, some people think it's just a matter of fitting in, you're going out with friends and you're trying to fit in. It's usually not the case. If you sit down with all these individuals who have these kind of core problems, it turns out to be something that they've been dealing with, whether it's bullying, whether it's racism, whether it's, family issues, domestic violence, something along the line that's triggered them, even heartbreaks, simple as, having a girlfriend or boyfriend and breaking up and then now not knowing how to deal with it emotionally. And you'll find male sort of counterparts experiencing these kind of issues a lot more than females. And the reason being because, again, they bottle up their emotions.
Thank you. And Ms. Tor, what about your party's perspective on this? What will the Conservatives do if elected to deal with, rising levels of addiction and the opioid crisis, particularly within the South Asian Punjabi Sikh community?
Yeah, so I actually just did a press release last week on this about mental health and addiction and safety. It's a big concern. So safe supply, which as we know, has been implemented since January of 2023. And we have about 7 overdoses per day now, which is a lot. And our South Asian community is very affected with it. I think having detox programs, opening up the there used to be a hospital up in Coquitlam that was shut down, was in talks with the Liberals, and the NDP came up and they closed that. We have to have compassion. There has to be a safe space for these people that get the treatment in the right direction, in the right environment, with the right professionals that can actually help them and, you know, get them to be back in society. You know, if they need to go through treatment, you know, first you have to get through detox, then recovery, and then back into society. We have to be compassionate with that, right? These people have some sort of, it's like if you have cancer, you just don't leave someone on the streets and just say, well, you've got cancer, go deal with it, right? We go through chemo, you go through radiation, you go through surgery, there's a process, so there's steps to this. And same thing, so as a party, we believe that having prevention and having detox and recovery programs is a must for these people, and so that we can bring them back into society and they're, you know, healthy and well.
Thank you. And Ms. Singh, a bit of a question for you is, a recent report by the First Nations Health Authority has revealed that the average life expectancy for First Nations individuals in British Columbia has plunged by 6 years between 2017 and 2021. This is compared to a decrease of about 1 year for non-First Nations individuals. As a party that has prided itself on its commitment to Indigenous and First Nations rights and healthcare, how do you explain the disproportionate decline in the life expectancy of Indigenous peoples under your government's watch?
I would say that racism, especially Indigenous racism, is it's a systemic issue which is prevalent. As a government, we have never said, we have always acknowledged that racism is there, right? And that's the reason, the steps that we are taking to tackle that racism. Whether it is being the first jurisdiction in Canada to have the DRIPA legislation, to acknowledge the rights that our Indigenous people on whose lands we enjoy our life and live our life, that they need to have those rights, but also that it's a systemic issue. The racism that they have been enduring, it is for generations. First of all, the acknowledgement happens, and then also the changes. When we brought in the anti-racism data legislation, the consultation with the First Nations leaders, and having them on the table when we are making those decisions, when we are making decisions about any important policy, and healthcare is one of the biggest one. We know that the racism, like the report that came on the racism, especially. Now the name of that report is like, I've taken the name of that report so many times now, it's just slipping my mind. But we are taking it very seriously, and Minister of Health, Minister Dix, has a full team to look into that, looking at the incidents that are happening, but also looking at it from the systemic point of view. I feel as a government, it is our moral obligation to tackle racism, and we take this extremely seriously.
Thank you. And Ms. Tour, a similar question for you, but of course it hasn't been your government in power, and so the shift in that question is, if the Conservatives are elected, I know there's been many concerns raised about the Conservative Party's stance on Indigenous rights and the progression that has been seen in recent years in terms of respecting the land and ensuring that there are laws and policies in place to increase access to healthcare for Indigenous communities, and whether that's something that the Conservative Party values and will actually continue with. So what is it that your party will do to make sure that this disproportionate decline in life expectancy, as well as other health-related issues for Indigenous communities, are actually addressed and not allowed to worsen?
Yeah, no, for sure. You know, as a party, healthcare is important for everybody. We're in a crisis, right? So it's not just for Indigenous people, but for everyone. Right now, there's hospitals that are shut down in, in rural areas. So that is something that we, as a party, are taking healthcare very seriously. So we've put a patients first health reform, and healthcare is something that we can have buildings. But if we have no one to staff them with, they'll be closing down. There's shortness of, doctors and nurses, just not even in rural areas, but in communities and suburbs like where we're living. So that's healthcare is something that's very important to us, and the Indigenous people will not be left behind.
Thank you. And I know you said that healthcare is for everybody and not just Indigenous populations, but of course the disproportionate decline in life expectancy is impacting First Nations individuals more than it is other communities. And so does your party have any specific policies that will increase access to healthcare for Indigenous populations?
We have been talking with the Indigenous group, and when we worked on the policies of our Patients First, that was part of our research, and we will be implementing having more healthcare and more education. As Ms. Singh said, that there's racism, or there's not enough education out there, or not enough support to be, to help them, guide them, even if it's with diabetes or different health concerns that are on the rise within that community or within that region, to giving them that support. So that is something that we have been speaking with, and with different rural areas that need that support.
Wonderful, thank you. And what about yourself? What would you do if elected to try to ensure that this issue is not allowed to continue being perpetrated, but instead something is actually done to resolve it and to bring equal access to healthcare for all communities, in particular Indigenous communities?
I think education is very important. Educating people on what it is, the lack and gaps that these individuals have faced and continue to face, and where it is that we as a community need to progress when it comes to racism. And in healthcare settings, we see it all the time. It's unfortunate, but I think, the policies in the healthcare system are lax sometimes when it comes to these things. And we need to maybe, some of the policies are outdated, to be honest. We need to bring back compassion. We need to bring back that caring atmosphere. We need to bring back, when you're taking care of a patient, it should be taking care of a patient. What we're really focused on in today's date is admin. The stress on the workers themselves leads to some of the problems that are happening. It's not always that they are actually racist. It's sometimes it's racism, and sometimes it's the fact that they actually don't have the time to care for that particular patient. And then it's seen as racism because they're running around trying to, care for all the patients at the same time, managing the admin side of things. And I think when I started nursing way back, it was very different. We were doing a lot more patient handling and less paperwork and technology now that's come in. And now we're seeing that, a lot of the nurses are facing problems that way. Physicians, we're having to do a lot more technology, admin work. We have less time to spend with the patient.
Thank you. Another issue that continues to impact all individuals in British Columbia, but particularly those in the Lower Mainland, is a lack of affordable housing. So, Ms. Sinner, what would you do to bring housing prices down while increasing the availability of affordable housing without passing the cost on to voters via higher taxes or onto landlords who may simply be trying to save for retirement?
Thank you. So there's a lot of things that the BC NDP government's already doing to address affordable housing. One is I know you said no taxes, but this isn't for residents, speculation tax, right? So if you're not living here, there's a tax to ensure that the houses that are here have people living in them. Houses are for people to live in, not to just make profits off of. The Airbnb regulations have increased 20,000 new houses that are back into the market for people to live in, for people to be in. And on top of that, we have a built-out plan to build 300,000 middle-class homes that are affordable for people so they can live here and address that affordability issue. And all of these things are, it's going to take time. It's going to take time to see it. This is a global inflation issue that we're seeing across not just the country, but the world. But these are things that we're doing to specifically address the issues for people so that people, young people like us, can afford houses here, can continue to grow and live here and build families here and not have to be concerned about the affordability issue. And then on the landlord issue, those are certain things that we see. And there are a lot of renters' rights, but there's also been lots of things brought in to address those issues for landlords. Recently, the housing minister announced that there will be like an insurance plan in which if there are issues, we recognize that there are good tenants and bad tenants, there are good landlords and bad landlords. So in a situation where there is someone that might not be paying their rent and the landlord's taking on costs, there's an insurance to ensure that those costs can be recouped by them and that they're not also not pay their mortgage.
Thank you. And Ms. Ryan, I know that you've probably heard about the issues with affordable housing from your constituents as well. And so what is your position on this issue to avoid passing the cost on to voters and to landlords, but instead making sure it's a government policy that addresses this?
Right, and housing is across the board, as we know in BC. There's certain pockets of BC which is more or less affordable, and also housing itself is becoming more and more sort of rare to find because of population growth. Places like Surrey, so again, it's going to be different throughout BC. When I talk to residents across BC, there's areas where there's no such housing problem, and then there's areas where we're having to address this, Surrey being one of them. We are going to have to look at it as it's at this point, affordability is one thing, but it's also the sort of infrastructure, how much we have in place according to our population and our growth. Development in Surrey has increased over time, but we have not been able to actually identify what we can do long-term for this problem, because we're just seeing more and more growth in Surrey and there's not much left for housing. I think we have to come up with more creative ways of addressing this. I know certain areas we're building more apartments or we're doing sort of low-income housing, but I think we really need to look at it at a city level overall.
And Mr. stance on this issue, what is the Conservative Party going to do to increase affordable housing without passing the cost on to taxpayers or to landlords?
So we are going to come up with our platform, and I just don't want to say anything because the platform isn't out. It's going to come out in the next week, and we will have a very detailed platform for housing, because affordability right now, just not only in Surrey, I'm running in Langley, that has its own issues. People aren't happy with the fourplex, the sixplexes that are happening, just as Deepinder said. Infrastructure has to come along with it, so we can't just say that, we're going to do this and we're going to fix this and this is going to solve the housing, issues that we're having. We have to have schooling. Schooling's a big issue. Where are we going to house? We can house these people because we have the land, but the infrastructure, the burden that's going to go on the healthcare, the school structures, the traffic, everything has to take place. So we can't just say that we're going to put fourplexes or sixplexes and we're going to solve the housing issues, and that's going to take that part. But there's other things that have to be considered. So it has to be dealt with on a municipal, federal, and provincial level. So our platform will be addressed in the following weeks.
Thank you. We'll certainly keep an eye out for that. And Ms. Singh, turning the question back to you as well, what do you say to voters who may have the perspective that your government has already had a substantial amount of time to address the issue of affordable housing, but that they haven't really seen any changes being made?
I would say housing is a right that every human, our government sees it like a human right, that every individual, every citizen should have access to housing. So that's why within our government you will see a ministry dedicated to housing. First time we have seen that in this term, that we have that dedicated ministry. And also looking at different angles, our government has reached out to the federal government. We were the first ones to reach out to our federal partners to tie the immigration numbers with the housing. We were the first ones to advocate for that, and we take this very seriously. We are all for immigration. We are all immigrants here. We are a country of immigrants, but we also want that anybody moving to British Columbia should have access to housing. The work that Minister Callan is doing on housing, whether it is creating more than 300,000 social housing spaces, but also changing the getting the legislation out so that the people are able to, if they have a space, like why can't you build more housing? The duplex, triplex, like if you are able to do that, do it. And then along with that, as Jesse had already mentioned, housing is for people. Housing is not to make profit. So taking the speculation tax, I think it was a big, I think, contribution of our government to address this housing crisis.
Thank you. And continuing with the issue of affordability, Ms. Tour, one of the things that we know to be a key issue for many voters, and often particularly impacting women, is the issue of childcare, and affordable childcare at that. What, if elected, will the Conservative Party do to address the issue of a lack of affordable childcare, to ensure that families aren't choosing between putting food on the table and ensuring that they have sufficient plans in place to ensure that the children are also taken care of?
Yeah, so I'm a mother myself, and childcare has been a very big part of my experience. I've got 2 girls, and I had to work full time. Both my partner and I work, and childcare is something that the Conservative Party of BC will take, a look at. It's sufficient right now, but it's not 100%. The $10 daycare system is not working for everyone, and I know that they have some subsidy that have been put in place, but we will be taking a further look at it to see what more can be done and where the funding can come from and how we can support families, because families, as we know, we're in a time and day where people have to work. Some people are working multiple, jobs just to put food on their table. So childcare is something that's up and most important to us.
Thank you. What do you say to voters who take the perspective that not much has been done to deal with the issue of affordable childcare thus far by the NDP government? And how can they count on your party, if elected, to actually fix this issue?
Affordable childcare is something that the NDP government takes really seriously. And this is something that ties back into the issues that we're talking about here today. When we talk about pay equity, we want to talk about women's issues. These are main issues that allow women to get back into the workplace if they want to, and be able to have the affordability to put their children into a childcare program where it is, $10 a day. We were seeing previously that there was childcare up to $100 a day, $80 a day. It was at the point where people said, what's the point of working when my entire paycheck is going to childcare? And we are creating thousands of more spaces. We take this seriously. We're investing into this, and we'll continue to do it. With everything, it takes time. It takes money. We have to, dole that out. But that's something that the money is going towards. It is a priority for the NDP government, and it is an equality issue. So it is something that we will continue to focus on.
And are there any specific policies or programs that the NDP government has that it will either continue or institute for this issue?
I think it was actually Ms. Tour that mentioned it, the $10 a day childcare program. We're continuing to invest in that and build that out so that can be a bigger initiative. And that's something that actually people don't know that, that came from the NDP government. There's a lot of people. I was having a conversation with my husband, and he was talking to someone saying, oh, we were so lucky in the last month we saved like $900 on childcare. It's like that was a policy that came from the NDP government. It didn't just happen, and it is at risk that will be taken away under other governments where that don't take that as seriously as we do.
Thank you. And Ms. Rand, what voice will you bring to the table on the issue of affordable childcare?
Well, I'm going to have to agree, and that's where independence comes in. I think that's one good policy that the NDP has put in place. It has helped families out to a large extent. When I speak to community out there, when I speak to certain mums and fathers, single fathers, having to struggle to go to work and still having their children in daycare. So that's where I really feel proud that I'm running independent, because I can speak up and say, look, this policy is working, this one's not. And so I think in this case, I will agree that that $10 a day childcare is very, very important, especially for low-income families.
Ms. Singh, I'm going to start with you for this next question, because you are currently Minister of Education. And so recently, we know that there's been a lot of misinformation being spread within communities, and in particular the Punjabi and Sikh community, about SOGI, which is undermining people's ability to understand the importance of having resources and programs aimed at ensuring gender equality and protection for all people. SOGI is a policy and framework which has been around since approximately 2006, aimed at creating more inclusive classrooms and spaces for young people. So how do you as an individual and also as a party overall plan to counter misinformation while also ensuring that our young people feel safe and protected regardless of their gender or sexual identity?
I really want to thank you for that question. This is something very, very important for me personally, but also as a Minister of Education, but for me personally as a mother. For me, when my children go to schools, what I want to give them is a safe, inclusive space where they get the quality education, but they are not discriminated or harassed on any issue. Whether any child is wearing a turban, whether any girl is wearing a hijab, what language they are speaking, whether they're speaking with an accent, what ethnicity they are coming from, and same goes for what sexual orientation or gender identity they identify with. For me, having that safe, inclusive space is extremely important. Where we are talking about, like when I first became the Minister of Education and Childcare, one of the first things that we did was to create the Anti-Racism Action Plan, K-12 Anti-Racism Action Plan, brought into our education system. When I'm protecting every child, being a racialized Sikh woman, when I'm talking about protecting the rights of every child, whatever their ethnicity, how can I discriminate against the children who are coming from the LGBTQS+ communities? And we have known that previously these were the children who were bullied, who were harassed, and many of them they committed suicide. So it is a very, very serious issue, but it is an issue of equity, it is an issue of safety. That's how I take it.
Thank you. And your party is often, considered to be a party that may not be on board with keeping the SOGI resources available for our education system. So if that's not on the table, then what will your party do to ensure that our classrooms still remain safe for people, for young people, regardless of their sexual orientation and gender identities?
So the Conservative Party of BC, we are very much going to implement, we're not taking anti-bullying, that's our priority. So anti-bullying is something that's very important, but SOGI was supposed to create a safe space, which is still something that I believe in and my party believes in. But the ideology part, I have a 9 and a 4-year-old. My 9-year-old, I actually have gone into schools and seen with my own eyes. I don't want my child to be coming home and asking me questions of, what is this? And as a Sikh community, I've had a lot of families that have come up to me and said, actually when I initially got announced was, are you going to take SOGI? Are you going to take these books out? So I don't even think the parents understood what they were asking for at that time. And it was more of the concern of the books that are in the school. That is what the concern is. And as a parent, that's a major concern for myself. And that's why we do say that we will be removing those books out of the classrooms if elected, but having very high standards for anti-bullying and safe spaces for everyone.
Thank you. And if I may, upon a review of the SOGI policy, it appears that SOGI is actually a set of guidelines for teachers to choose to implement, as opposed to a set of rules and policies and books that have to be taught. And so which rules and books are you speaking of currently required in classrooms that the Conservative Party seeks to take out? So
these are books that are in the libraries of the schools. So they are available for children to actually see. I actually have the books. I actually have pictures of the books that are in the school system of the Surrey School District, Abbotsford School District, and I've seen them with my own. I didn't actually believe that because I was like, oh, I don't think this can happen, but they are there, and that's what I'm saying, that those books need to be removed, but having strict rules for anti-bullying and that safety part for everybody. Everybody is, has the right to feel safe when going to school. Doesn't matter what race they are, doesn't matter what culture, what they look like, what they wear, if they have disabilities. Everybody should feel safe, and that is something that we, as a party, feel very entitled that, we're going to implement safety, but the books need to be removed.
Thank you. I'm sure we can all agree on the safety aspect, and I understand, Ms. Singh, that you do have a rebuttal point. Before we turn back to you, Ms. Ryan, I'm going to give you an opportunity to weigh in on this issue as well.
Yeah, so yes, in community we do hear a lot of parents have concerns, and I think when it comes to SOGI, anti-bullying is a huge part, and it is something that we need to address daily in school, teaching children how to be kind and, you know, accept others as they are. I think my bigger thing is the way it was implemented, and I think that's the problem here, is that number one, the way it was implemented, parents, you know, they want to be informed about their children, what's being taught at school. And I think a lot of parents feel left out at this point from the curriculum, from what's being taught. And I think that is the biggest portion here, is that when I first ran School Trustee 2018, back then it was a pilot project. I had a lot of questions on it. I myself didn't know a lot about it. So what I said to everybody is, you know, hold back, I need to learn more about this. I think the teaching, the education, the implementation, and comprehension of young children, I think that's where the bottom line is. A lot of parents are very, very worried. Their children are vulnerable at those ages. And not to be knowing in the know or very informed of what's happening at school is a big problem for parents. And I myself would be that way. I'm just lucky my kids are older and I'm not going through that sort of stage and fear, you know. But I've reached out to a lot of parents. Parents have reached out to me. You know, they really want to know if SOGI is going to stay. Number one, I think it needs to be reevaluated. And number two, it needs to have some sort of parent, sort of parental information sessions or sort of consent involved. When we do regular sexual education from grade 5 to 7, when I grew up, we always had parent consent. And so why not for something like this? I think it's very valuable for parents to know what it is that you're implementing into a curriculum, not just saying, here we go, it's implemented. And I think that's where the biggest fear lies. And anti-bullying is definitely something we want to look at. But what is the curriculum, I think, and what it is that we're teaching, and or Jody has said there. So we need to know that.
Ms. Benner, would you like to weigh in as well, or shall I pass it over to Ms. Singh for rebuttal?
I think I'll give it to Ms. Singh.
And when you talked about the disinformation and misinformation that is being spread out, and that's why, like, both these my sisters sitting next to me are talking about like SOGI as a curriculum. It is not. It is not. There's no book on SOGI that is being taught to our children. You talked about, Jody, going to your school and find. I would really like to see the example.
It's actually not a. I'm not saying
no,
it's part of the. It's in the library, okay, so I will show you.
No. I like library and SOGI are totally different thing. Library is like we have thousands of books in the libraries, and we have librarians who vet those books. Every material being put in our libraries or being taught to our children is age appropriate. I take such pride in our quality education. They are coming out after the public education, creating misinformation about the resources that are kept just to keep our children safe. And they are talking about the books that are in the library being handled by librarians who are trained professionals out there. They are talking about banning books. We are not going to, there are thousands of materials in our libraries which are, I might like it, I might not like it. There are topics on racism, there are topics on anti-racism. Those are like, lot of people might not like be interested in, but there are materials in the library which are fully vetted by the school districts, and it is the school district's responsibility to take care of that.
Thank you, Ms. Would you like to take a moment to respond?
So, like I said, the book's called Gender Queer. It's perfectly normal. These are the books that I'm talking about, and I can show you pictures.
I have seen the pictures.
Oh, so I'm not okay with my 9-year-old or my 4-year-old being able to see those.
And is it available in an elementary library?
It sure is.
Okay. You bring me one school where it is available in the elementary school.
Sure.
So,
bring it.
Exposing SOGI 123 has it all on their website online. You can look it up here.
We're going to keep comments to moderated debate questions only. No questions or comments from the audience. Thank you. Ms. Toy, did you have anything else to add to that answer, or may I pass it on to Ms. Ryan for a response?
There's no point of argument.
No problem, Ms. Ryan.
So as I was saying, I think a lot of parents, they're not in the know. If there is no such books, then I think what needs to be addressed here is the bigger piece, which is how come it was implemented without sort of, you know, the parental involvement. And I think that's the bigger layer here, because if there, SOGI has a policy and then there's the education side, you know, so when we talk about curriculum, we're talking about the education piece to it. There's a policy on SOGI, which is the anti-bullying, which we completely understand. And I think nobody's saying, you know, the anti-bullying part of SOGI policy is fine. I think it's more along the lines of even pronouns. Now, if we talk about Punjabi or Sikh and South Asian, and a lot of you will recognize this, there are many uninformed parents. There are many who do not understand what a pronoun even means. And to all of a sudden, first of all, when it comes to immigration, we have immigrant families who come here, they adapt to the system. They have absolutely no idea, first of all, what the education is all about here. They're learning that, but in between all of that, this is thrown in as a piece. And I think what really needs to be identified here is that anytime you're implementing something into a system, you really need to educate people on it before you do it. And I think the governments, that's where they go wrong. And that's why you have a lot more protests, rallies, everything happening right now. Policy is being implemented like that, like it's candy, you know. And I think what we fail to recognize is that people do not know enough information. So when we're putting something in place, you know, 1 minute, that's what I was talking about earlier, put it in place and then take it away and then put it in place. We can't be doing that. We're talking about people's lives here. So when we're talking about people on a general basis every day, day to day, these are people who go to work, come home, take care of the kids. They have no time to figure out what's going on policy, procedure, you know, whether it's schools, whether it's at the government level. They're still trying to learn it all. And before they can learn it, it's already implemented. So I think one thing that governments fail to recognize is educate people before you actually implement something.
Things that goes hand in hand with education and ensuring that these kinds of policies, whatever the party's stance may be on the policies, are carried through is funding and ensuring that there's resources in our school system to have enough teachers and to have classroom space available. And so, Ms. Tour, what would your party do if elected to ensure that our education system is adequately funded and supported?
So education is obviously something that's very important. We have an education minister here with us, and we're definitely in a crisis for education. Teachers are needing the support. We have more disabilities, so as a party, we definitely want to look into having more EA support and making sure that the teachers have the support so that our kids are getting the right education that we need. So we will be looking at education as a whole. You know, it's not just, you know, even like the portable issues that are happening here in Surrey. The NDP government had, you know, they ran on a previous election saying that they're going to remove them, but now we're double in number of portables. So we're obviously not, you know, matching where our, you know, immigration. Yes, Surrey's a growing city, but you know, we have to make sure that we're catching up with everything, right? We have enough teachers to support the students, so the classes aren't overcrowded, the portables are being taken care of, and the kids are getting this, and the teachers are getting the support that they need. So.
And Ms. Sinner, what about yourself? What will the NDP, if they remain in government, do to address this issue? Because clearly it hasn't been fixed.
Yeah, so I'm going to try to talk fast because there's a lot to say in this minute and a half. So this issue of lack of funds for education is an issue inherited by the NDP government. So quick lesson, John Rustad, he's not new to the game of politics. He was in the Liberal government for 20 years before becoming Conservative. In his last 4 years, not a single dollar was put to education in the province. So you're already starting at a lack, right? Not only that, they took the teachers and tried to cut down their class sizes, take away from their collective agreements, which led to the Supreme Court. The case went to the Supreme Court, and then the NDP had to fix all these things. So yes, we did say that we would get rid of portables, and there were 7,000 students in portables when the NDP inherited this issue. The NDP created 13,000 spaces for students, so that issue should have been fixed. But due to immigration, where the expectation was 1,000 students per year, we're getting 3,000. So obviously, we're trying to catch up to the issue. But when you inherit an issue where you're not even starting at zero, you're starting at negative because the previous government has not invested in education, it's really difficult to then catch up, but we will. And we are investing in education, and we will do that. And this issue is not over, because John Rostad, even now on the record, has said, we'll just put more students into classrooms. And that issue is being re-litigated, which you cannot do that. We need quality education, and we need our students to be cared for. We need our teachers to have the resources they need. And to do that, we need to fund education. And we will continue to do that, and we will go on to create those spaces and ensure that we don't have portables. But it takes time, and it takes resources, and it's tied to immigration as well.
Thank you. And Ms. Round, what is your...
I think on lack of funding towards the, and the gaps in the system. When it comes to education, education has been kind of going downhill for a long time. We've been addressing this issue, whether we're nurses or teachers, that in the classrooms, when it comes to special needs, for instance, lack of resources there, lack of counselors. We as volunteers in the community have tried to even provide free service. There's red tape, there's bureaucracy at all levels when you're trying to even provide free service, because you can see the gaps and the funding's not there. So I think what happens is our children suffer overall, right? Teachers are suffering, they're working hard, they're trying to maintain everything. But we definitely need more funding put towards our education system. We also need I'm going to bring it back to curriculum just for one more point. We also need to bring it back to, the core curriculum, math, science, all of that needs to be really upgraded. I'm really at a loss as to, why we're not really focused on those things and making leaders out of our children. And I truly believe that, we're kind of mushing the system, mushing the curriculum, mushing the sort of special needs into the regular classrooms, and I don't believe in that. I believe every child deserves the right to have proper resources, proper funding, if we're paying this many taxes, we need to implement education at the least properly for our children.
Looking back now, what advice would you give to your younger self and to other young women in the Punjabi Sikh community who may be interested in politics, but who may not be sure if it's the right move for them, or who may be scared? We can start with Senator.
Yeah, so when I think you say look back at your younger self, but even at myself now. Yeah, it's kind of hard to look back. I'm like, I don't know how back to look back. But I think it's really important to know that you're needed in these spaces. Your voice matters in these spaces, and we want to create those doors. I look up to people like Minister Singh, who has opened these doors for Punjabi Sikh women and been a mentor to people like me, so I can follow in these steps. And I look forward to being a mentor for anyone in this room that wants to do that, anyone that that wants to do that. And just on top of that, we talked about these spaces, these political spaces having men. I really hope that if you would like to, I hope to see you out on the campaign trail. I hope to see you come to our office. I'd love to chat with you. I'd love to connect. I'd love to inspire one another back and forth. It's not one way, and really know that we can all do this together. It's important work that we're doing, and though it's scary, you're doing this for the greater good, not just for yourself. And tying it back to Sikhi, a lot of the work that we do is kirt karo, band shako, right? Work hard and share, and make sure you're doing everything for the greater good of community. And if we keep those principles in the work that we do, it will be greater than the fears that we face.
Thank you. Ms. Starr, what about yourself?
I would just say don't get bullied. Just make your voice heard and don't suppress yourself. As a Punjabi woman, just feeling that you're equal, right? And you matter. So what you have to say, like as little girls, sometimes it's like, you're just a little girl, just sit here quietly, don't voice your opinion, making sure that your voice is heard and it's heard loud and clear. Yeah, I'd love to see more women in politics. It's, I ran with Ginny Sims before in a municipal election, and people asked me, why did you run with her? And I said, it's because I felt like she was Indian, she was a woman, and someone that you can look up to and get mentored, right? And so it's beautiful to see that other women have paved the path for us. Ms. Rachna Singh is the minister. Yes, we sit on different parties, but that doesn't mean that we're not all here as Sikh women, Punjabi women that are paving the path for younger women that want to get into this field. You know, it could be anyone. Someone can look at me and may not have the same values as my party or who I am right now, and they might be like, you know what, if she could do it, why can't I do it? And you know, and it can be, you know, an NDP, Liberal, Conservative, you could be Green Party, whoever you want to be, but I just feel like if I could, you know, change one person that looks up to me, you know, my daughter even, I've looked at at other women, and you know, politics hasn't been a place where a lot of Punjabi women have been in place that you can actually look up to. So there are a few, and I give respect to them that they've created a path for us to follow.
Yeah, no, I see the values of Sikhism that I, being a Sikh woman, like what Sikhi is teaching us, and this is what we are doing in politics as well. It is all about the well-being of the greater society, and whether it is education, whether it is healthcare, whether it is like creating anti-racism policies, and it's not easy work. And I'm really glad to see these young women sitting with me. Jodi, maybe our party lines are different, but I'm really glad to see you, Jodi, putting your name forward. Like, this is not easy work. And having a woman like Jessie, Dupinder, and I know, Dupinder, I really want to wish you the very best as well, Dupinder. But this takes a lot out of you. And this is all about passion. It is all about giving, like what Sikhi has told us. And I really want to wish all these women, and I really hope that many more women, many more Sikh women have that courage. When they look at this panel today, they have the courage to see, and they see themselves in us. And this is what my hope is. That's what keeps me going. And I really want to, because we are not going to be here for forever, I want to mentor the next generation of women to see us and see themselves in us and be here where we are sitting today.
So first of all, again, thank you for having us. I think this was really a wonderful platform, and congratulations to you guys for doing a really good job on the first one. I hope you guys continue and progress from here. Now for me, I think the biggest thing is KaursVote. Kaur in itself is a princess. We have to ultimately love ourselves as women. We have to learn that we are able to make a difference in this world and to change, the status quo. No voice is kind of a weak voice, I say. We bring strength to the table. It doesn't matter who says what to you and where, whichever platform you choose. It doesn't have to be politics. It can be at a board. It can be, volunteering somewhere. I always tell women, step up. I tell young girls, step up. Choose your path, choose your passion. And eventually some of us, come to politics, right? For me, it was never in the books. I just kind of got placed in here, and I actually love it. I think it's a great way to make a difference. And again, we look up to, other women who are older than us and wiser than us and have been in the political realm for a while. We've seen some come and go, and I do wish everyone here, the best going forward. And I just say, go out there and make a difference as a Kaur.
so much for that insightful conversation, debate, and panel. I think I can speak for everybody here that we would